Hi folks, for years we've had a lot of publicity about the Martelli cutting system, and for once I'm going to break down things individually and show you exactly how our Martelli cutting system works. The first thing I want to touch on is our rotary cutter. Our rotary cutter, as you can see between the comparison, first of all, our rotary cutter is the only rotary cutter in the world that can be claimed ergonomic. Now the true meaning of ergonomic means natural. As you can see, every other cutter in the world is based on this principle right here. So if I have a stick with the blade at the end of it, the first thing I have to do is I have to pick it up and I have to turn it, no longer becoming ergonomic. As you can see with the Martelli cutter, we've already turned the blade for you. So that's really nice to know. Now touching on that, because it's ergonomic, carpal tunnel syndrome, arthritis, tendonitis, a lot of these disabilities that we've gathered over a period of time from unconventional cutting, now we can eliminate that. So we can cut for long periods of time and don't have to worry about any of these things affecting us and actually help preventing them as well. Next thing I want to feature on with the cutter is layers. Layers are very important. The reason why we can't do more than 6 layers right now with the conventional cutter, because once you push down on a conventional cutter, you're using indirect pressure behind the blade, therefore putting an angle on the blade, so the angle, instead of the blade cutting straight up and down, is now turned. So you can't get more than 6 layers. A good analogy I like to share with you is, for if you will, is an egg. If you take an egg and squish an egg from top to bottom, you can't break that egg. Well, it's the same principle with the Martelli rotary cutter. I'm using direct down pressure on top of the blade, but most importantly, right in the middle of the blade, so my blade never bends as compared to blades bending all the time. Now, we've already discussed, we know that we don't do more 6, 8 tops with layers. Now, I don't know how many layers there are here, but there's a whole heck of a lot more than 8. Not only that, I'm going to double it up again. So right there, I'm going to tell you there's easily 20 to 30 layers there, easily. Now I'm going to put my ruler down and I want to show you layers, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is just cut very easy. But now I'm going to turn this, make sure I get all the last layer there. I'm going to turn this and I want to show you how straight those layers are from top to bottom. Do you see how straight those layers are? But because it's made ergonomically and we use direct down pressure, now we can get 24 to 36 layers depending on if it's a rough cut or if we're using a ruler. The other one thing I want to share about you, I have heard time and time again at a show, when do I change my blade? I've had my blade in there for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. Well, you change it when it's dull. A lot of people say, well, you know, I hit a pin with my rotary cutter and my blade's gone bad. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Here's the problem with conventional cutters. Again, because we use indirect pressure behind the blade and we push down, that razor edge of that blade bends. Once a metal blade is bent, you can no longer bend it back. And because ours doesn't bend, we don't get those little so-called nicks in our blade. They're not nicks, they're small microscopic bends that you can't see. So 3 to 4 to 5 years is very common for me to hear at a trade show with the Martelli cutter. You might get one project with other cutters, you know, depending on how elaborate the project is. Now, another thing I want to show you, which I think is really, really neat, let me open some of these layers, is when you're cutting patterns. Let's get another piece of fabric here. When you cut patterns, first thing you have to do is, let me get one single sheet here. When you cut patterns, first of all, you have to hold your fabric so it never shifts on you. Well, once again, the reason for that is because you're using indirect pressure behind the blade and you have to keep your material from moving. So now with that being said, because I'm on top of the blade and I have total control, I want you to watch the accuracy with patterns. Now watch. Nobody in the world can do that with the conventional cutter. Do you see how perfect that is? It cuts each pattern. It's very nice. Now, one reason everybody talks to me about is, I just don't understand, Dave, how you guys can make your blades last so long. Other than being a little bit different than conventional rotary cutters, this is a trade secret, but I'm going to share it with you anyways, okay? When you sharpen a blade, and you get a blade from the factory, and they sharpen it on a millstone, what happens is there's a blade that comes to a point, and what they do is they sharpen one side of the blade at a time. But what you don't realize, when you have tungsten steel, and it's made out of hardened steel, and you're sharpening one side of that blade at a time, what it's actually doing is it's decreasing the strength on the opposite side. So we've developed, at our manufacturers, when we sharpen our blades, we actually sharpen both sides of the blade at the same time. And what that does is that keeps the razor edge, the actual tip of the razor edge of the blade. It keeps it strong at all times. So that's why we're also getting the longevity and the blade life that we get with the Martelli rotary cutter.